Today's WVAR member update features Katie Johnson, General Counsel and Chief Member Experience Officer for the National Association of Realtors.
As I told you in the Monday Minute, we're here today with Mark Mansour, Amy White, and Katie Johnson, NAR General Counsel, to talk a little bit more about the changes to Article 10 of the Code of Ethics, and specifically Standard of Practice 10.5. I want to get right into it. So with that, I will start with Katie and let her do her presentation.
Okay, great. Thank you, Ray. Hello, West Virginia Realtors. I am excited to talk with you about 10.5 and its implications, and then especially dive into some really great questions I know that you all are having about its application. So let's dig in. Where do we begin? Let's begin at the beginning. The beginning of time for the Code of Ethics was 1913. So it's been around in a long time. And as you know, the Golden Rule is its foundation. It's premised upon moral integrity and competent service to clients and consumers. And realtors are charged with adhering and upholding the integrity of the industry and the practice of real estate. So because of that charge, it's changed throughout time. It's been amended many times in order to reflect the changing marketplace, in order to reflect the different needs of consumers, and in order to reflect the different perceptions and values of society. So with that, and very typically, it has changed recently to reflect all those things, and specifically with the Code of Ethics edition of Standard of Practice 10.5 that was adopted by the Board of Directors at their November meeting. This is a quote from the preamble that you know well, but I add it here to just remind people who say, are we out of our lane? What are we doing here? We are in our lane. We realtors have been charged from the beginning to zealously maintain and improve the standards of your calling, real estate, and to protect and promote the interests of clients and consumers, as well as collaborating with your fellow realtors, which all reflect on the integrity and honor of your profession. So we are in our lane when we talk about Practice 10.5, the new standards of Practice 10.5. It flows from the requirement to not to deny equal professional services or be a party or plan to discriminate. That applies to fellow realtors. That applies to all consumers. What does it do? In essence, the application of 10.5 and the ancillary rules that were adopted ban hate speech in any context. So realtors are now prohibited from using hate speech based on a protected class in any context. And we're going to talk about exactly what that means, how we apply it. But I want to start too with this because I think it's a helpful analogy. In 1964, when President Lyndon B. Johnson signed the sweeping and controversial Civil Rights Act that provided equal rights in the areas of employment and public accommodation and transportation to so many people, he said the purpose of this law is simple. It does not restrict the freedom of any American so long as he respects the rights of others. And I think, I hope, I expect that eventually we'll all find that to be true here in the context of this Code of Ethics change. That is that the purpose of this ethical obligation is simple. It does not restrict the freedom of any realtor so long as he respects the dignity of others. So 10.5 states specifically, realtors must not use harassing speech, hate speech, epithets, or slurs based on race, color, religion, sex, handicap, familial status, national origin, sexual orientation, or gender identity. That is the standard of practice, and that is the test and standard for evaluating your statements and conduct. So knowing that there will be lots of questions about it, and definitely in keeping with how we train around the Code of Ethics anyway, we've provided a lot of guidance and are continuing to provide a lot of guidance. So if there's anything you can take away from my discussion today, it's go to our website and watch the videos. Mark Mansour and several other of your Realtor colleagues are doing monthly videos to explain this Code of Ethics change and to help hearing panels and grievance committees evaluate complaints in a way that will eventually lead to consistency and conformity applying this standard of practice. So what you see here is the NAR Code of Conduct and Anti-Harassment Policy as adopted by the Board of Directors years ago. It's provided in Appendix 12. Appendix 12 to the new Code of Ethics Arbitration Hearing and Arbitration Manual provides a lot of helpful guidance for understanding this change in the Code of Ethics and applying, evaluating potential violations. So when evaluating harassment, we look at how NAR evaluates and determines harassment under our own harassment policy. When evaluating hate speech, we'll start by looking at the dictionary definition. That is speech that is intended to insult, offend, or intimidate a person because of some trait. And for purposes of 10.5, there's a list of traits or protected classes that the hate speech must be directed at. And then we also will look at the definitions of epithets and slurs when evaluating potential violations. So in addition to adopting a new standard of practice 10.5, the Board of Directors also amended the applicability of the Code of Ethics to apply in all contexts. So now it says a realtor shall be subject to disciplinary action under the Code of Ethics with respect to all of their activities. And so, you know, an understandable reaction that we heard in the great debate leading up to these changes was, oh my gosh, that's, you know, an infringement on my personal liberties. Well, it's more narrow than that. And specifically 10.5 does apply to in any context and to your activities, you know, anywhere you might express hate speech. All the other codes are very their subject is about a real estate transaction. So they are drafted and written to pertain to your activities in a real estate transaction. But because 10.5 does apply in any context, this amendment was necessary. Also, the definition of public trust was expanded to include all discrimination against the protected classes and all fraud. You know, the first part being kind of an administrative correction where it used to say intentional discrimination, but there's no such ability to find intentional versus non-intentional discrimination. Discrimination is discrimination. But the second part being actually a substantive addition, whereas before it was fraud related to finances. This is just fraud generally. And if there is fraud, then it must be reported. If there's a finding of fraud, it must be reported to the licensing agencies, the state licensing agencies. But very specifically, if there's a finding of a violation of 10.5 outside the context of real estate, it does not get reported to a state agency. Only things related to a real estate transaction would be reported to the state agency. So another question, lots of questions we received as a result of the amendment was, oh my gosh, are people going to start, what's that word when you like stalk people online? We're going to go back. What? Creep. Are they going to creep my Facebook page and creep my Twitter and see what I've said over the years and then file complaints against me? No. As always, ethical changes and obligations are prospective, so it is not retroactive. It doesn't apply to anything you said or did before November 13th, but it would apply to instances of hate speech occurring after November 13th. But as I said, the most important takeaway I think, today is this page, these helpful resources. And I'll say I challenge you. I challenge you to watch a training video. The January training video specifically dives into examples of hate speech and examples of what may or may not, be considered hateful by a grievance committee. Watch that January training video or any of the monthly training videos we have on there before you decide that it's not right for you, or that this amendment may be problematic for you. So that's your challenge. I'm sure Ray's going to give you links to that website so that you can visit it, or you may have my slides too if you'd like. But that's I think that's an overview. But I'm happy to answer any questions that you guys have.
Thank you, Katie. We appreciate that. One of the roles that we take most pride in West Virginia is that our role as a WVAR is to make sure that our members are aware of what they need to be aware of so that they can practice real estate in a safe and a professional way. And so I'm happy to have you here today to help to shed light on this new policy and this new code change so that we can make sure that we have everybody on the same page. We're also very fortunate in our state to have one of the national experts on this code and on this change with us. We always refer to Mark as the king of ethics. So we're happy to share him with the rest of the world just for a little while, but we're happy to share him with the rest of the world. So Mark, I'm going to ask you to take over now and talk a little bit more about how it applies to us at the state level and what it means to our members.
Thank you, Amy. Thank you, Katie. And again, Ray, but thanks, Katie, for joining us. Just a few comments on the slideshow, which was excellent. I'd like to have that. But, when you talked about policy statement 29 being changed and voted on, and, it states now a realtor shall be subject to disciplinary action under the Code of Ethics with respect to all of their activities. That was during the months and the meetings of debates, that was a big thing. But if you look back at the Code of Ethics, there are really only, well, now two, but really only one article in the Code of Ethics that could have gone outside of a real estate related activity, and that's Article 15, where you can't make false and misleading statements about competitors. So that kind of fell out of the real estate related activity, and then again, standard of practice 10.5 would follow that. So it's, people were panicking about, what was going on with all the 16. So it's really before policy statement 29 was changed, it was really only one article that fell out of that realm, and now standard of practice 10.5. Also, in the state of West Virginia, for the West Virginia Association of Realtors members, nothing has changed as far as the process. If you are felt that there is a possible violation of one of the articles and you are a complainant, you of course would call the state association, and then they would talk to you about the different things you could do: mediation, arbitration, ombudsman. But they're the beginning where you start. And with this, and then they'll instruct you through how to do it. But the enforcement of the code and what WVAR does, along with the rest of the country, is it does protect the public, but it has a lot of other achievements for members who are accused of maybe a violation. When you're wrongly, mistakenly charged, if you're wrongful or mistakenly charged with a violation, the hearing process provides for a person for personal and professional vindication. So not, the process is not, we have a complaint, oh, we're going to get him. I mean, there is the process. Remember, there's always two sides to a story. So if someone is wrongfully or mistakenly accused, this process that we have through the grievance committee and professional standards hearing panel can provide a personal and professional vindication. And then if a violation is determined that it did happen, the hearing process educates members about their professional obligations and serves as a deterrent for future violations. With the new standard of practice 10.5, it really is a two-step process when grievance committees and or professional standards hearing panels receive a complaint. Step one, is the speech harassing speech, hate speech, epithets or slurs as defined by the Appendix 12 in the Code of Ethics and Arbitration Manual? And step two is, if so, is the speech based on the protected classes? And it's a two-step process. So, there is on 10.5, the new standard of practice, even a more in-depth look at how they would come up with a possible, if there was a possible violation. So, Amy, and Ray, that's basically the process and some comments about the new standard of practice 10.5 and policy statement 29.
And that's that. Now that we've got that covered, what I'd like to do, and so we maximize the use of your time, and we're so appreciative and honored that you took this time to talk with us, Katie. I'd just like to dive into some of the questions that we get, the real world kind of stuff, because sometimes we don't know how to answer, honestly. And so we want to make sure that we do. And it's interesting, just a quick story, when you said it was prospective and not retroactive, we had a hearing, not to reveal anything confidential, that involved issues in Article 10 that we could not find the person guilty of because it was prior to. And in our letter to them, we basically explained that this behavior in a more legal way is, you're off the hook, but had this happened after, this would have been a violation. I thought of that when you said that. So we have had that experience. So what I'd like to do is we'll just dive in and ask some questions. So one I got just the other day was from a member who said, am I at risk of losing my livelihood and my realtor status if I post on social media that I'm angry about my daughter having to compete in high school sports with a transgender person? Is that hate speech? Is that something that could cause me to get in trouble? So let's just start with that one.
Okay, sure. And I'm going to start with some remarks that will be received very unsatisfying. And I hope that we come around to understanding why it's a good thing. So what's unsatisfying is that there's no right or wrong answer I could give you today. We can talk about all the examples, and I welcome that. But I am not the arbiter of any decisions or any outcomes. There's no list of approved hate speech. There's no list of unapproved hate speech. That is the job of the hearing panel. And that's the part I hope you find satisfying, that the determinations and the outcomes, as with every other potential ethical violation for anything, have to be the responsibility and the privilege of the local association hearing the charge. There's a lot of good reasons for that. Mostly, the reasons that Mark mentioned. There is a long-standing, legally tested and sound process that provides due process and consideration to every complaint, and therefore, respect to every complainant and every respondent. So, a local hearing panel is the only person that can answer with certainty. Now, having said that, we can discuss, what the considerations would be, because this is all part of the training that's taking place right now. Those videos I mentioned on NAR.Realtor, monthly videos, Appendix 12, case interpretations, all this is being developed to help hearing panels make the right outcome. So as Mark said, what the grievance committee would do first is take that statement, I disagree with a transgendered person competing against my daughter in high school sports. They take that and they say, does that express hate? Does that statement is that intending to intimidate or degrade any person? And then if they say yes, then they say, is that based on a protected status, transgendered being the status? I think the grievance committee would have a great debate over that, and might come out and say, I don't see the intent here. I don't see the this weaponizing intending to degrade a transgendered person, because they're saying their focus is on their child. They disagree that their child has to compete. Now, that said, so that's for the grievance committee to channel. If they say, yes, it's possible, it goes to the hearing panel, and the hearing panel then says, complainant, and respondent, what was the context in which this was said? They'd ask questions, they'd give answers, and then they would determine whether or not it constitutes as hate speech. But I'll say, using the correct and proper term of a transgendered person, what you're asking is it hateful to say you disagree that they can compete in sports? And I think that a grievance committee would be very hard pressed to find that that's hateful. Mark, or
Next
I don't know
question.
if other people disagree.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. Again, like you said, it is up to the grievance committee and hearing panels per association who hears this complaint. But I'm the same way. I did the 2-part test as far as what we could see with this, and I don't see that. Now, here's a question, Katie. Along with this post, let's say that, okay, probably not a violation or a potential violation, but what if I respond to that post that, let's just say Ray posted, just for example, and I respond to Ray's post in a certain manner that does constitute hate speech against that protected class, and I am not a member, I'm not a realtor, does the onus fall back on Ray because it's his post? Or where does that fall in when Ray made just an innocent opinion?
Right. So, a realtor will not be responsible for another person's speech. So if somebody is posting on your page, or somebody else is making a statement in your vicinity, the realtor is not going to be held responsible for that other person's statement. So the answer is no, that you aren't responsible for someone else stating something that would otherwise be a violation.
Right. And then probably best practice would be for that realtor who posted that is to, as practical as possible, maybe get rid of it, delete it, or do what they want with that comment.
Yeah, and I agree that that's a best practice, because that's respectful, and that's what the golden rule says. We were talking about it with Amy earlier, and she reminded us, like, put yourself in their shoes. That is the golden rule: treat others as you want to be treated. Well, how do they want to be treated? If you are allowing other people to post hateful things on your page, are you going to look like a realtor who is open to working with other realtors who might be transgendered, or clients who might be transgendered? It's not. It's certainly not a welcoming environment. So if you can control that, then I think it's a best practice to do that.
Okay.
Yeah, I know one of the things that we talked about, and when we did have we'll knock down the fourth wall. We did have a previous conversation today, but one of the things that we talked about was that it's not a control of what you believe. It is a control over how you behave, and that there is a difference. And if you are a representative of the realtor brand and the profession of real estate and the association members, that there's an expectation that your behavior needs to be, above reproach.
Absolutely. And this isn't a new expectation.
Right.
As a real estate licensee, you have a longstanding legal and ethical duty to behave in a way that is not discriminatory towards any individual, colleagues, or consumers. This ethical change supports that already existing legal and ethical obligation by saying, to be clear, hate speech against somebody could lead to that discrimination. So we're going to help you comply with the law and avoid that.
Another question that comes up a lot that I receive, and I know Ray does as well, along with at the national level, is if I say anything on a social platform about God or the Bible, will I get kicked out? I mean, is that a you know, am I going to lose, like Ray said, my livelihood?
No. First of all, NAR does not control your livelihood. We have nothing to do with your license status. You can be a licensee and not be a realtor. But more practically, to address your answer, no. I mean, just think about it in the reverse. Can you express your religious beliefs without expressing hate towards an individual based on their protected class? The answer is most certainly yes. As a religious person with beliefs, I know for certain that you can do that. Can you, the same question though in political realm, can you express your political beliefs without also expressing hate towards an individual based on their protected class? Absolutely you can. If you haven't in the past, this might be causing you to pause and think before writing or speaking, but you can still have the beliefs and articulate them without violating 10.5.
Katie, I have one of the most wonderful things about our relationship is that you put up with me, and I don't have to pull any punches with you. So I'm going to follow up on what Mark approached and be a little more direct. We know that in the Old Testament, in particular, that there are passages, there are discussions of things that do attack particular races, genders, sexual preferences, and so forth. So what if that becomes the quote? What if I start getting hardcore Leviticus on people and put that, which I think that could easily sound like a hate speech towards a particular protected class?
Yeah. Good question. And, you know, as with all the others, it's difficult. It'll be a hearing panel decision. But so what they're going to evaluate there is if you're talking about something clearly, you know, hateful against a protected class, you're probably only looking at Leviticus, but I don't, maybe somewhere else. But they would look at the context. What is the context? Are you a preacher and are you saying that in the context of preaching your beliefs to your congregation? Maybe then if I think that they'd be hard pressed to find that that's a violation. Are you in the context of posting that you know, using your example that you gave me previously, it was about homosexuality. And so if you're using it in the context of saying that homosexuals are inferior or less than other people, then I think that they'd find a violation. So it's about the context, you know, basically, does the context of your statement result in the intimidation, denigration of someone's equality with other people based on their protected class? If so, then it's going to be challengeable. If not, you know, that's a good example too about the preacher. They're preaching the Bible to, you know, in the context of the Bible. Teachers would be in the same thing. Teachers are teaching about discrimination that existed. They might be saying and using real life examples of hate speech when teaching. Fair housing teachers, for sure, who are talking about real life instances, may be saying that. Are they going to be held in violation of 10.5? No. What is the context? The context is education. The context is not intent to denigrate, and quite specifically, it's the opposite in the context of teaching about fair housing. Does that resonate?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why we wanted to do this, because there's so many people out there just questioning, I can't do this, I can't do that, I can't say bad things about this person or that person, I can't express my dislike for Donald Trump or Joe Biden or whatever. And that's why we want to do this, because there's so many things out there. And it's like you said at the beginning, it's because we can't just give them a right or wrong answer. We can't give them a yes or no, and that creates concern and ambiguity and people worrying about what they say. But I do agree with you. We should have been worrying about what we say all along. Anyway, but the I can think of another one that sort of along those lines with, and we talked a little bit about this, but the Black Lives Matter movement in the height of the summer, when we were going protests, and some of those things turned into riots in places that I'm sure they didn't want it to go, but it did. And so there was this movement by some to, when people would talk about Black Lives Matter, to say all lives matter, or blue lives matter, or this matters, or that matters. And is that, and I can even take it back to for a while, and I think it changed, Mountaineer football, which is important to everybody on this screen but Mark. And they had a Black Lives Matter sticker that they were going to put on their football helmets, and people started going crazy and saying, I'm never buying a season ticket again. I'm never going to a game again, because they're putting Black Lives Matter stickers on their helmets. And are any of those things? And I know when I ask these questions, I say, let's pretend we're a hearing panel, and what are we going to look at? So I mean, I understand you can't say yes or no, but that's kind of where we want to go. Is like, what are we going to look at in these instances?
Yeah, I think that's a good example because it's tough and there's a lot of angles there. So you're looking objectively. Let's start with just the objective statement. You're saying all lives matter. That's the objective statement that clearly is not hateful. There's nothing hateful about thinking that all lives matter. So I think that's an easy one. But what you're saying is it's in the context of, if you say Black lives don't matter, all lives matter, then you are saying Black lives don't matter. And that is challengeable because you're saying based on a protected class, they are inferior, or that it is meant to intimidate, degrade, result in Black lives being less than others. So the statement all lives matter is it by itself is not going to get very far. But in the context, so when evaluating that, another reason that's a good example is because it's a political issue. And in political issues, political affiliation is not a protected class. So Donald Trump, Joe Biden, your political beliefs, Republican, Democrat, that's not protected. You can say things. Again, you are a professional for consumers, and consumers are of all political beliefs. So as a best practice, you should caution yourself not to say offensive, hurtful, demeaning things about anybody. But if you do, based on political affiliation, that is not subject to the Code of Ethics and therefore would not fall under 10.5. So, I just want to make that clear. And I think that, maybe when people are asking these questions, and I've not taken this approach because I just thought of it as we're talking, but it might help to say, ask yourself these questions, these 3 questions at least. Is the statement expressing hate? Meaning, let's look at the definition. Is it intended to intimidate or degrade or make somebody feel inferior to others based on their protected class? Is it based on a protected class? So that's the second question. And then third, how would I feel if I were in that person's shoes? So if my statement is all lives matter, and I'm posting it specifically in response to someone who is very adamantly Black Lives Matter, how would that person who you are responding to feel about that comment? Again, these are just things to consider, and the hearing panel is going to put it in context. Are you just saying all lives matter, yay? Are you saying Black lives don't matter, go away? Just, I don't know, getting back to the golden rule is probably a good guide for those who want to express, potentially hurtful statements. Just put yourself in their shoes.
Yeah, I think that goes back to Katie, Mark, and Ray and I have all taught a lot of fair housing classes, a lot of real estate law classes, lots of code of ethics classes.
Good for you.
And in all, well, yeah, good, bad.
Yeah, no.
And in all of those, we always, at some point, and usually early on in the day, you guys can affirm, start the class with saying, this is about you measuring your own behaviors first before you use this as a weapon against others. So I think what you're trying to say, and I think what we've come to sort of at the almost conclusion of this conversation today, is that what we're doing as a real estate profession, as the Association of Realtors, is we're challenging our members to reach for a higher argument, to reach for better language, to reach for better motivation for what they do and how they behave, certainly in what they post into, into social media sites that can be perceived by others in whatever way. So I would add a fourth question to your challenge questions, which is, does this need to be said? Does this need to be said? Is this something that I'm saying because I'm angry in the moment, or does this need to be said, out into the world? Does this need to be something that's becomes a permanent part of my history?
That's a great question. Is it necessary? Yeah.
And I have a standard line that I use that I think some other people have stolen, but it's basically when we start out in ethics class, I just say, I'm really not going to teach you ethics, because if you don't have it, there's nothing I can do about it. Your mom and dad and those that influenced you as a child should have already taken care of that for me. And so we're just exposing you to what you have to do. But we've seen through the last year, particularly in GRI, when we kind of get to cast out a broader net when we teach, because it's not for in the confines of CE. And we talk about, and it's basically what you're saying is, and maybe it's the fifth question or it's the culmination of those questions, but what we tell you is that, and I'll use masks, for example, since that shouldn't hurt anybody's feelings. But we've got a lot of that people out there that wear masks, don't wear masks, it's fake, it's not fake. And my response is always, don't you want to sell houses to people who wear masks and people who don't wear masks? So why are you chiming in? Because you're setting the stage for people to not use you. And everything that you do and say on social media, when you take an opinion on that, is isolating, potentially, when you take those sort of positions, isolating a potential client.
Mm-hmm.
But not only them, the other people around them, or the people that say, well, if you're saying that now, what about if I do something? Am I going to be the next person that's victim to your Facebook and social media posts? So it's always, and I say that about if you use the examples of former President Trump and President Biden. Don't you want to sell houses to people that supported Trump, and don't you want to sell houses to people that support Biden? So why are you chiming in? And that's always kind of where we take the argument, no matter what. But it doesn't, as we can see from the social media posts, it doesn't really take hold with a lot of folks.
It's not sinking in for everybody. That's true. But it's a great point, Ray. Like fair housing compliance, treating others like you want to be treated, the golden rule, following ethics. It's not just the right thing to do, which it is very much the right thing to do. It makes good business sense. It is dollars and cents, bottom line, good business sense to comply with fair housing and ethics. And it will be reflected in your bottom line if you do. So that's a great point that people maybe don't remember.
And I think most brokers or most companies have a social media policy. And I always say, before every class that we talk about social media, hey, pets, food, and vacations. That's all you need to do. Live by those rules, you're good to go. One thing I will touch back on, we always tell them, because these are the questions we get, are you going to kill my livelihood? Are you going to take away my license? We always tell them, we can't take away your license, the enforcement, and that's the real estate commissions. But there are some disciplines that that may hurt your pocketbook. Spend more time taking more education. So, like Ray will get these questions. Am I going to get kicked out? So it's we have to tell them. There could be some disciplines, some harsher than others, but we can't take away your license. So we do tell them that. I will let you know. To help Amy and Ray and you yourself wrap this up, the Professional Standards Committee, along with the Interpretations Advisory Board, we are coming up with new case interpretations, new case studies for Article 10 and Standard Practice 10.5. We have a meeting on Friday. We had a meeting last week. So, this was this year at NAR, as far as these two committees. It's usually a one meeting done, 2 meetings were done. I mean, this is going to be over a dozen meetings that we're going to have to come up and augment some things and come up with some case studies to help hearing panels and local associations. So that will come forward, and that.
Bring me in on those, man. I'm a walking case study.
Yeah.
You know, and in all fairness, I think that certainly we can't take their license away, and I don't think anybody's portraying that we can. But if enough patterns of practice occur and you would lose your membership, we can significantly impact the licensee's livelihood. So it's not I don't think it's an unfair question or concern when they ask that question, because of course we can't take your license away, but you know, you could if you lost your status of membership, we certainly would have an impact on your livelihood, and a significant.
Sure. No, and it's not to lessen the gravity of this change. I mean, we understand. I'm compassionate and understanding of those who see it as a major change to what they're used to. But I am an eternal optimist, and I think that time and education, importantly, will bring everyone around to seeing why this is positive and why it's in line with our existing, expectations of high integrity and ideals. And I'll just add very seriously that in 2020, it was a remarkable year for many, many reasons. One of a major benefit to me is to getting to know Ray, honestly, and attending your.
We are recording this, right?
No, but attending your weekly town halls almost immediately when we had to transition to virtual and pandemic mode. You started hosting town halls with politicians and industry people and providing really good and useful information to your members right away. Your Monday minutes are awesome. I see that the West Virginia Realtors ask good questions. They're out there, they're volunteering, they're doing all these great things. Like, just because I didn't know Ray that well before in West Virginia, I didn't realize the capacity of change, of leading change that you all have and that you all are doing. You are change leaders. And so I feel like this is a really good opportunity for you to embrace this by becoming educated and helping lead and drive the change that will result as an adoption of 10.5.
And I appreciate those kind words. And I mean, the best one we ever had was the one you spoke at. So that was our best town.
You're so full of it.
Town hall ever. But
you know, Ray. You
are the only person outside the state of West Virginia that has a WVAR crisis management team ball cap. I'll have you know.
Oh, and it used to be right here on my ledge. No, it's over here. I could go get it if you want me to.
So you got that going for you. But we appreciate everything that you do for us. You have really become a friend to the association and have helped us in so many ways.
There it is.
There it is. Look at that. And I appreciate you doing this, because I think this is going to be very helpful to us as we continue to spread the message of we're not going after anybody. This is the way you ought to behave anyway. What are you worried about? But I mean, we have had and I think a lot of it's based on confusion. We've had lots of calls. We've had lots of people. I'm going to quit. I don't want to do this anymore. Why are you doing this? Why are you doing that? And it's, again, I think you hit the nail on the head, because we don't have yeses and nos. We don't have the black and white answers that we can just tell you. It's all in this area of we have to figure it out together. Mm-hmm. And because of that, I think it's caused I don't know if panic is too harsh of a word, but it's caused some serious concerns from the membership, because they like to know what they can and can't do, period. And we can't tell them. I mean, we sort of can, of course, don't do that. And I liken it to what our state general counsel always says, because he also operates a legal hotline for us. And one of his stock answers is 9 times out of 10, if you're asking me the question, you already know the answer. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a lot of what these guys know the answer, and they're not doing it in a bad way, but they're just looking for a comfort zone. Mm-hmm. I don't want to be one of those guys, but I don't want to accidentally be one of those guys too. And I think that this is going to go a long way to help that. So I really thank you so much for taking the time to do this today.
Absolutely. Thank you all. Thank you for what you're doing and what you continue to do.
Thank you, Katie, and to everyone. We will obviously we'll post along with this video on our Facebook page all the resources to the additional training that's out there for our members to take. I encourage everyone, as Katie did, and I know Mark and Ray do as well, to spend time on the website to learn more, to understand better, and to be able to, you know, to feel confident that you're not going to accidentally be one of those guys, because you're probably not one of those guys. So, you know, I look forward to the continuing development and the conversation. I appreciate your comments, Katie. We do try in West Virginia, and I believe that we have been seen in the last at least 2 decades as being a leader in adopting what's right. And, you know, this is one of those times. So we're happy to be in the front end, and we're proud of our buddy, Mark, to have served in the capacity that he did to make this happen.
Any final comments? And let's just wrap it up.
Thank you all, and any questions, just let us know.
Yeah, thank you again, Katie. And with that, Ray, I'll let you close, but I will say we'll have this obviously on our Facebook page, on our YouTube channels. And if you haven't subscribed to both of those and you see this in one place or the other, please make sure that you do, because we keep talking to you, but you only hear us if you want to. So please make sure you hear us. And with that, Ray, I'll let you close out.
Again, thanks to everybody, Mark, Amy, and Katie. You've become, like I said, such a tremendous asset to us as we've maneuvered through this 2020 storm, and look forward to all the things that we'll be able to accomplish together in the future. So, and we will post this soon.
Awesome. Thank you all.
Thank you.